Okay, I guess we can get started then. Thank you all for coming to the first session of, I call it Her Story of America. It's going to be, the sessions will be talking about historical accuracy and interracial relationships in the film, and primarily in historical films, and like how accurately it reflects on our history. So before we get started, I guess we could go ahead and do like brief introductions. You could say your name, year, and major. And I guess since I think most of us are ASU, so yeah, college would be fine too. So I can go. I'm Anusha. I am a rising sophomore studying sociology and history. And yeah, I attend ASU at Barrett the Honors College.
And she could probably just call on people if you want to. Yeah.
Sounds good. We'll go with Stormy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stormy Light. I'm an incoming freshman at Barrett the Honors College, and my major is Civic and Economic Thought and Leadership.
Awesome. We'll go with Professor O'Donnell.
I'm Kathleen O'Donnell, and I'm a professor of history here at ASU.
Awesome, thanks. We can go with Dr. Shanakan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Shanakan. I teach at the University of Massachusetts, and I'm moving to the University of Missouri, and co-director of the Race and the American Story project with Adam Seagrave.
Awesome. We'll do Dr. Seagrave then.
Yep. So co-director of the project with Stephanie Shanakan, and I teach at ASU in Civic and Economic Thought and Leadership.
Awesome. We'll go with Milla.
Hey, my name's Milla. I'm studying fashion design and film and media production at ASU, and yeah, with Herberger Institute.
Awesome. Thanks, Milla. Caroline.
Hi, I'm Caroline. I'm a rising senior studying political science, and I'm in Barrett the Honors College at ASU.
Awesome. Thanks, Caroline. Paulette.
Hi there, I'm Paulette. I am a recent graduate from ASU, majored in political science and transporter studies.
Awesome. Thank you. Ishra.
Hi, I'm at ASU. I'm a bar student. I'm a rising sophomore, and I'm majoring in microbiology.
So thanks, Ishra. We'll go with Catherine.
I'm a pre-freshman at Yale. I'm probably gonna major in something like science, technology, and society.
Awesome. Thanks, Catherine. We'll go with Travis.
I'm Travis Hooper. I'm a rising senior at ASU studying political science and sociolegal studies.
So, and then we'll go with Monique.
Hi, I'm Monique Thomas, and I'm a rising freshman over at U of A, and I'll be studying biomedical engineering at the Honors College as well.
Ooh, cool. Awesome. Welcome. Sorry, 1 second. Someone's trying to get into the event, so I'll send that over. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. So thank you all. We can go ahead and get started. Right. So I called it History, Heritage, and Heart because I wanted to write relationships, but I wanted to maintain the H. So we'll be talking a little more about relationships, but not as heavy in this one. So we can go ahead and get started. Sorry, 1 second. There's a couple people trying to trickle in, so. Oh, sorry. Okay. So today I'll be like doing a brief run through or just like giving like information. If you haven't watched Pocahontas and Princess and the Frog, I know it's been a while, so I'm just gonna be talking about that, and then we'll have like a discussion afterwards so that it just won't be me talking. So yeah. Okay, so before I get more detailed into the films that I'm going to be focusing on, I just wanted to give a timeline on how Disney has been called out for racism. So in 1941, Dumbo, in the film Dumbo, one of the crows that helps Dumbo fly is named Jim Crow, and one of the crows, like they sound like they have like a southern black accent, and it's very apparent in the film Dumbo. I recently watched it and I didn't even pick it up, so that was like interesting to learn and find out. And then in Jungle Book, the song "I Want to Be Like You" apparently carries some sort of like racist sentiment that like the minorities want to be like with the majority population. So this song has kind of been under the heat for that. And then I think it's 1994, the animated version of Aladdin, it's made the character seem more barbaric, especially in the beginning scenes where Aladdin is trying to escape from the like guards. One of the lyrics is "I'll cut your ear off," which can be seen as very racist and very stereotypical. So some of these stereotypes are like being shown in these films, and many people get this kind of information and they make it more apparent or more common in society, which I'll also be talking a little bit about too. All right, so I mentioned that one of the focus of my presentation will be on Pocahontas because it's come under the light for a lot of scrutiny in terms of historical accuracy. So I just wanted to give a brief overview on who Pocahontas is. She is known to stand up for herself and wants to bridge the like colonist and indigenous communities. And she also values her culture and her heritage. Frequently in the movie, she respects her like tribe members, and as well as like speaking to her grandma, seeking that kind of advice, especially when she wants to go pursue a relationship with someone who's not like her. So that's Pocahontas. And then we have Princess Tiana from the 2009 film Princess and the Frog. It's originally based on the fairy tale The Frog Princess. She's known for being a hard worker. She has to undergo several obstacles when she had to open her restaurant. Like she didn't have enough money saved up to open the restaurant. And then, as you may know, she was a frog most of the time in the film. So yeah, I know that part is unrealistic, but just had to go through several obstacles. And then she's known also to be a community builder. Like by opening up the restaurant, she wants to follow and support her father's dream, which is to bring everyone together as a community. So she wants to give back to her community. And then I just wanted to go over the settings for each film. So we have Jamestown and America in Pocahontas, in Pocahontas, and the setting is pretty accurate. When I watched the movie or like analyzed any historical, like compared to like the stuff that I learned in history. I also did this in my History 130 class with Professor O'Donnell. So this is based on when it was only Native Americans in Virginia, and then the English come in at 1609 or 1610, and they colonize Jamestown. Like you can still see like houses and like they're close to the harbor. That's where the Virginia Company from England sailed in. And then 1920 Louisiana, so about like 310 years later, is the Princess and the Frog setting. It's known for its French style of architecture, and as well as its segregated neighborhoods, which we'll be touching on too. I'm not sure if you all recall this, but this really struck my mind when I was watching Princess and the Frog, was when was when Tiana goes home from her friend's house, and she goes into a very like segregated and I guess like lower class level of housing, which is just filled with Black people. So you could still see segregation during this time, because this is when Jim Crow laws were apparent during this time, which I'll be getting into the next slide. Similarities and differences in the histories. This is going to be about Pocahontas specifically. So the conflict between the Indians and English, throughout the movie, you could see the English calling the Indians savages and wanting to kill them and steal their land, which was kind of similar to what was going on in history. There were two major wars with the English and Indians known as the Anglo-Powhatan Wars. Pocahontas was heavily involved in that too. And then I mentioned like the same setting and same time. And also an interesting thing to note that in both the movie and in like the history, like historically speaking, Pocahontas was loved by her father. So there was a strong father-daughter relationship scene. And then some of the differences are the age difference. So in history, Pocahontas was 11 or 12 years old when she first encountered the English, but I'm hearing different things from the Disney version. I think it's 18 years old, not 24 years, but she's in her like teens or young adult age. So there was quite a bit of age difference in that. And then also John Rolfe or John Smith, that's one of the more bigger debates that comes out from learning about Pocahontas, but the actual Pocahontas was married to John Rolfe, not John Smith. And there was also a really big age difference between them. So Disney uses John Smith in the film, but it's actually John Rolfe who Pocahontas marries. And she also marries earlier on too, I think when she was 11 or 12, to a person from her tribe. He's also mentioned in Pocahontas. His name is Kokum. And yeah, he is also in the film too. And he dies later on, which leads her to marrying John Rolfe. And then I'll try to go quick on this one. So for the similarities and differences for Princess and the Frog compared to history and in the film, this takes place during the Jazz Age. You could see jazz music playing throughout the film, showing how music and culture are ingrained within the landscape. And segregation was very common in Princess and the Frog too. As I was mentioning before, whites and blacks would be living on their own, and they would be taking their own transportation at times too. But some of the differences that I noted was that it's very unlikely or uncommon for a Black woman to be friends with a white woman during this time, because of just how segregated the South was, and as well as like how biased they were towards certain races over the other. And then it was also very unlikely for Black women to pursue their dreams, because she's wishing here to get her restaurant open, because of just like the barriers and obstacles that she has that there are because of the Jim Crow laws, and the way how the government is set up in Louisiana prevents that from happening. So yeah, I guess we can move on to kind of like the discussion part. I was just wondering what you all thought about what values are similar or different in both princesses, and how they value their family and culture. And feel free to use the raise hand function or jump in. Okay. Yeah, I guess I could start it off like really quickly. So I was just gonna say that for Tiana and Pocahontas, like to them, like family means a lot for them, because they want to do what's right and as well as like maintaining their culture and being supportive and passionate and taking care of each other. So they try to foster that relationship. I think, Monique, did you want to go?
Sure, I'll go. But
Okay.
I think that both princesses, it's interesting because they're both from, like, I don't know how I want to say this in the right way, but they're both very strongly like rooted in unity somehow. Like I know you mentioned that, and I never really thought about this before, like how Tiana, for example, was trying to live out her father's dream of bringing people together and uniting people, like all colors, you know, with food, you know, and restaurant. And Pocahontas, despite, you know, being, you know, being in native land, and although her tribe was not very like too open themselves to like having newcomers coming in, and the newcomers were just trying to, you know, wipe them all out, you know, she was trying to like unite them together. And even though it's presented a different way from like the Disney versus like what actually happened, you know, I think they're both very well connected in their pursuit of unity between all types of people that are like present in their area, which I think is really like admirable personally. But yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Definitely like having that restaurant would like bring some sort of community, which is what Tiana wanted and like what's best for her family. Does anyone else want to add on to that?
I'll add on to that.
Sure.
So I think that just jumping off of Monique's point, you can definitely see the importance of culture within like both princesses. So for Pocahontas, it was her connection to her land and how she persevered in kind of like protecting that despite the settlers coming in and trying to take that away from them. And then same kind of with Princess Tiana with the Princess and the Frog. So they're both kind of trying to like preserve what's important to them despite some of like the racial obstacles that they have to encounter in both movies, and also like what the stereotypes that are being held against them within society, especially with like the white settlers coming in, or in The Princess and the Frog, the white individuals that are like playing a role in the 1920s in Louisiana.
Yeah, definitely. Like that has like a big role, like especially like with the historical time period and like culture around it. Yeah, that plays a big role. Any other thoughts on this question? And like feel free to ask your own questions too. Like I'm cool with that too.
Yeah, I'll go. So just going off of Stormy and Monique's point, I think it's so interesting that both films kind of like there's this concept of being like spiritual, like how we were talking about that concept of preserving what's important to them. I think definitely over time, Disney as a company really like, I think especially with our generation too, they saw the value in trying to appeal to us by incorporating like different, like outside of the, I guess, regular princess image, because back then we had like Sleeping Beauty and Snow White and Ariel, and those are very kind of traditional type stories where the end goal is always just like falling in love. But I think these both films kind of do a nice job of incorporating like independence, and then love is the complement to that, instead of just being like, oh, like being domesticated or being married is the whole idea. And I think I just wanted to say, I think that gives off a good message, especially to younger kids who will look back on the past and watch these movies, because there's a clear difference between the story of Sleeping Beauty and now we have like Moana and Mulan and other princesses of different races. So I just wanted to say that I think that's really important.
Yeah, that's definitely great. Because like when I was doing research too, like a lot of common things that were appearing was that like previously, like when Snow White and Sleeping Beauty came, it was more of a portrayal of them like confined to the household and just waiting for their prince to come, and then just you know, kind of fill in that piece, like they live happily ever after and that's it. So definitely I'm glad that Disney is starting to take that turn and being more inclusive and showing that like Disney princesses can do anything, which kind of leads me into my next question. Oh, 1 second. Do you think it's important to show the accurate history of these films? Yeah, because I know like one of the debates that has been coming up, like even like writing these questions, like I think, oh, like this is going to be geared more to like a younger audience. So do you think like, is it like the imagination or creativity that matters, or is it the, I guess, like historical accuracy that matters more? Like that's always been an ongoing debate for me, and definitely like other films.
Oh, did anyone else want to go, or? Okay, so I think it's interesting because I'm not sure if everyone's watched this film, but I know for like Coco, for example, it seems like they put a lot of research into Hispanic traditions and history and the language. And I think that's why it was such a successful film, because they talked about just like the Day of the Dead and all of these different traditions that the Hispanic community has. But it's really hard because I think Disney as a corporation is geared towards younger children. So it's kind of that debate, where do you think those younger children will see, because like I know for me, I only valued cultural history as I got older, but as a young kid, you're not really aware of its importance. You're not taught to, I guess, like seek that out in a film. So I think slowly and gradually it's good that Disney is doing it, but I have no idea if like younger kids really look at the accurate portrayal of characters.
Yeah,
I would have to completely agree with that. I know that as a kid, like there is a certain like essence of innocence that we try and like, you know, keep with our children, but it's also very important that our youth, who are going to be our future, who are going to be making the big decisions, like, you know, in the future, you know, are not sugar-coated with the past, because history is not, it's not all bad and it's also not all good, but it's also important that we portray what has happened in the best way possible so that history does not repeat itself. But we also still want, like, you know, the typical Disney like moral of the story, like this is what you should learn and take away from this. And we do want like that, I don't know who that was, I was trying to look for who was speaking before, but I agree, like Disney is like, you know, very geared towards the younger audience, and typically the younger audience won't want to look for that type of like historical accuracy and everything in those types of films. But I think it's very important that they can still learn from that and somehow gain not only like a moral of the story, just like for life in general, but like some sort of social like lesson as well. Like, because kids are a lot more impressionable obviously than adults. It's easier to like, you know, shift around like their points of view when they're younger rather than when they're older. So that Disney does have like that pathway and a very easy access way of doing that if they really wish to do so.
Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna stop sharing then so that like everyone can see like who's going, so that will be easier. So I will do that. Yeah, did someone else want to go?
Sure, I'll go. Just going off of Monique's point, I agree with what you're saying. And also I think that just because when you're younger, the media really does influence your opinions. So I do think it is important to preserve the historical accuracy of some of the things that are happening, especially in like Pocahontas, let's say. I do think they romanticize the oppression that the Native Americans had endured during that time. And just like I remember the movies from when I was younger, and learning more about it in history classes, and like the actual severity of some of the oppression that like the Native Americans endured during that time. I think definitely I was confused as to like why it was so romanticized in the movies and kind of like whitewashed in the ending. But I do understand that they have like a moral obligation to try to like please the audience and I guess kind of like preserve some of their like own creative visions. But I think that it is really important that we recognize that some of these historical like inaccuracies can be kind of like, I guess, disturbing for like young children, especially like, as they grow up, they might be confused as to why these were put in the films in the first place. So yeah.
Oh yeah, Dr. Shanakan.
Yeah, I wanted to agree with everything everybody said. I think that all those points are definitely valid. But I also want to raise another point, which is that, you know, we do want to be able to offer young Black kids and kids of color an opportunity to be romanticized, you know, like the opportunity to escape these really tragic, traumatic aspects of history. You know, if other kids can have a plethora of stories, you know, and fairy tales, it's nice to actually have stories for Black kids, about Black kids and Black people that are also full of romance and love and magic and all of that. I do agree that there needs to be some definitely a revamping of our history books and histories and herstories and all of that. But I remember when the Frog Princess movie came out, my kids were probably like elementary school. They were all excited that this film was coming out. All my kids, my 3 kids look like me, you know, they are dark skinned, and they were excited to finally see a Disney princess who looked like them. And of course, it was lovely, but the disappointment was the fact that we didn't see her much in the film. You know, we saw her more as a frog than we did as a person. So I think there's a I don't know, a balance that we need to get to, and why we thought, Adam and I both thought that Anusha's subject matter, her theme was so important, was that we know that these films and pop culture have such an impact on how we think about the world around us, and such a long an impact that endures, that stays all the way through childhood into adulthood. So I guess my response is a mixture of, you know, wanting the romance, but also wanting the opportunities for our children to escape, but also be seen for who they are and what they go through.
Oh, sorry. I just had another question. This is kind of just like a very broad question, so I'm not expecting like a right or wrong answer, but this is for everyone. For past films, like the older, like in the age where Disney wasn't as progressive with race and like their different stories, do you think that, because I know in my opinion, even after generations after us, I'm sure even us as parents, probably we would tell our kids to watch these movies because it's the childhood that we've grown up with. So as Professor Shanakan was saying about the influence of pop culture, but do you think, would you rather have it where the future generations after us, the kids specifically, would see like The Little Mermaid, Snow White, like the kind of less progressive films, and then see Princess and the Frog and Mulan and Moana and the more progressive ones? Or would we try, well, it's impossible to rewrite it, but, or would you rather have the way where we would like wipe out the older non-progressive films? Like, I think the moral of the question is, would we rather preserve the non-progressive films, or would we just continue to make more progressive films and like push that to the back, if that makes sense? I don't think I made sense, but.
Oh, I I totally got it. That's such a great question, and I'm glad you asked that, because to me, what I've been seeing is that you see Frozen, Moana popping a lot more up, and I feel like everyone's forgetting like who's Snow White, who's Little Mermaid. I think that's why the live actions are trying to come back to kind of preserve that. But to me, I feel like the way how Disney is moving, and since like our world is like being more interconnected, is that it's going to be focusing more on those princesses that have never been told. Like, I think I remember like you and I were talking about this, but like there's going to be a princess, I think, from Southeast Asia, which is like amazing, because the only like princess of Asian descent is Mulan, or even Jasmine too. But it's great that Disney is trying to expand and be more inclusive.
Yeah, going off of your question, I think it's a really great question. And I think almost like it's kind of tricky to try to like figure out how to like preserve those movies, while also I think like the movies of the past that were less progressive can almost be used as like educational movies to show like this is what it was like in the past, and these were the type of like gender roles, like racial stereotypes that were preserved in the past, but now look how much we have like progressed in the future, and this is what we want to showcase more of, more people of color, people of different backgrounds and ethnicities, and so I think it can almost be used as like an educational type of like sense, where you're able to like see these are like the movies of the past, but this is what we're like moving more towards.
Yeah, I'll have to completely agree with Stormy. I'll keep this short, but I like my first response to your question, which I will admit is a very good question. Like, I think that like I said before, not all history is all good or all bad, but Disney would do good by showing and keeping all those movies and showing their progression. So like just as Stormy said, like this is where we started out, where it was kind of very close-minded. We had like very specific roles for everyone to play, but now we've broadened ourselves out, and like look at how many more movies we've produced and more films and everything that's just so much more diverse and just more inclusive, which I think is a great idea for them to just continue to just keep progressing and like being a lot more inclusive. But yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for answering my questions. Those are like great answers. I totally agree with you both about it's that comparison that's important, because like if kids just watch the progressive movies but didn't know where Disney started, I feel like they couldn't look back on it and see what it would like to be without like diversity or culture. So I think it's important to have the bad and good parts of history so we learn from it.
Can I just also say what an amazing question that is. It's a question that really I think a lot of people are thinking about, right? Do we take down these monuments or do we keep them? You know, like, is that history that we want to keep, or do we need to wipe them out and start afresh? You know, I think that's a question that everybody's thinking about. I think one of the, it's tricky, you know. I remember when Lion King came out, how much we loved that film. You know, it was our childhood, but it had so many problems. You know, I'm African, and we came to find out that all the hyenas had African American voices. You know, and so this is part of the problem. Yet, as a young child, I didn't realize that. But I think that The Lion King is a really great example of showing how Disney can take something, remake it, and end up with a different message. And we know that, you know, the new Lion King didn't get great reviews, but I personally, I'm a Beyonce fan. So I just thought that Beyonce's, even the music, the album that came out as a result of that, is a show of the progression from the initial version to what it is now. I think that's a good case study for how Disney can take the past, learn from it, and produce something new that really is inclusive and wonderful.
Dr. Seagrave.
Yeah, I know. I think the comparison that Dr. Shanakan brings up with the statues and monuments is an interesting one. Yeah, thinking about what to do with parts of the past that are symbolic and representative of things that we may no longer agree with, and do we right? To what extent do we get rid of them? To what extent do we preserve them or contextualize them or show the comparison? And so I think that in this case, the movies are more difficult for me and more complex than the monuments. I mean, I think that the statues can be complex depending on the case, but I think that it's easier to figure out what you're doing when you have a static monument. What are we representing with that, rather than an entire film with different characters and plot elements and things like that. So yeah, because in this case, I'm wondering whether the older Disney films, right? So despite the misrepresentations and the lack of inclusivity in the earlier ones, there are certainly elements of the stories that are kind of built upon in the more recent, more inclusive movies as well. So there is kind of a, there are elements there that we might not disagree with, or might be worth keeping around, in some form, with alongside the newer ones that have improved upon the shortcomings of the earlier movies. So I don't know. It's a great question. I'm just sort of thinking through this. I haven't thought about it extensively before, but with young kids, you really have to think about that, what to do with these older movies that have problems. And cartoons are a little different too, kids movies, than movies that are geared towards adult audiences. I think that there's a difference there that we're picking up on too, just because the way kids respond differently to what they see, and then also the purpose, the educative purpose, I guess, right, of kids movies compared to adult movies. But yeah, great question. Interesting.
And oh, sorry, you go, Anusha.
No, go ahead.
Oh no, just one thing that I was kind of pondering about is with that point going on about how younger audiences are kind of, their like movie media is totally different from adults. Because I think if you even compare movies like Black Panther that have a whole Black cast starring in there, or Crazy Rich Asians, being like an Asian American, I definitely know, whether it's Disney movies or just kids movies in general, like High School Musical and things, the Asian stereotype is very limited to one thing, like the Asian nerd in the background. But I think with Crazy Rich Asians, it's a whole cast with many different archetypes. And I think it's interesting how the movie industry, not only Disney, they are progressing, but at the same time, some films are still like under fire for whether it's racism or the wrong portrayal of different characters, misrepresentation in like minority communities. So I just think that's interesting how kind of the issues in the films for adult audiences trickle into like children's movies.
Yeah, I was gonna make a quick point. Oh, Professor O'Donnell, did you want to go?
No, I'm just completely happy listening to the rest of you.
Awesome, just making sure. Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, especially when the live action films came out from some of these older versions, like a lot of there was a lot of questions, or like even enthusiasm about the casting, like, oh, who are they gonna pick? Is it gonna be exactly like the older films? I remember, especially for Aladdin, they casted like Naomi Scott, who's like half Indian, half white, and there was so much backlash on that because they're like, oh, like you didn't get an Arab woman, like that's just like Disney. They were like accusing Disney of being like racist and all that. So it's like interesting to see that too, because I was like really happy that she got to be in it, but I know some people were like, oh, like she's not Arab. So like playing these roles, like, do they need to match like these respective characters? And also like another thing with Little Mermaid, like I think the live action one, it's going to be a Black woman playing that. And I know some people were uncomfortable with that. And it's like, I'm actually glad that Disney's doing that to like be more inclusive and showing like like anyone can be anything. So I just wanted to bring that point up, especially with live action films.
I think it's very interesting that you brought up the live action with like the casting, because I know back when I was still a senior in high school, now we're transitioning now to college, but a debate that came up was about actually what you just mentioned, was like having a Black woman play Ariel, and some people were really uncomfortable with that. And of course, like personally for me, I'm all for it. And like some people are just so stuck with like what they saw as a kid, because I get it. It was part of your childhood. That's something really close to you. But I mean, it's also a new age. We need to start this era of more inclusivity. But I was actually going to ask a question about like, what did we think about like the casting for some like the other live action films that they already have done, even though like technically it may not be like historically accurate. So like, for example, like the Cinderella movie I think they did in 2015 had like quite a few like it had a lot of diversity in the cast, even though it might not have been historically accurate for the time of the film technically. It was still nice to see like different shades on the screen. Like it was still like a breath of fresh air. And I was like, the movie was beautiful in my opinion still. I mean, it was well done, but like it was still nice to see like the fresh faces on there. And then even with Beauty and the Beast, there was still a lot of inclusivity and like diversity on that cast as well, which I really liked. So I was wondering what you guys thought about that, and then also for the future live action films, because I know a lot of people were gonna have like, some people have problems with like making the cast a lot more like diverse, and then others don't. So I just wanted to know what you guys thought about that.
Yeah, well, yeah, I have some thoughts about that. I mean, I think, yeah, diverse casting is really important, and it is kind of, I think the fact that people are, some people are so bothered by, having Ariel be cast as a Black woman. I think that's a symptom of, well, it shows how much we need to diversify our casting, because it's, there's no reason that I can think of as to why that should bother anyone, except for the fact that we've been socialized as kids and forward in a way that makes us resistant to seeing people who look differently than our default or what we imagine on screen. And so I think, yeah, both in, I know there's a lot of great work being done in plays and in, in live performances around diverse casting, but I think in movies too, it's extremely important and can have a really important effect when you're sort of forced out of your comfort zone of seeing people who only look like you or people you're used to seeing on the screen. I think that can have a really profound effect on audiences.
I just wanted to also add, I think the reason why we see so much progression is because, viewers and the audience actually voice that we want to see that change and that diversity, because like ultimately money talks, right? And so like whatever the consumer wants, that's what we get. And so I know like in a lot of films, like Scarlett Johansson was like playing a lot of roles that she technically wasn't suited for. And so, there was a lot of backlash in that. And I know that, it's needed that backlash is needed in order for us to see that progression. And I think if we want to see more progressive films and we want that representation, then we should continue to keep on voicing like what we want as, as an audience and what we want to see in our societies.
Yeah, going off of that, I completely agree with that point of view. And I also think that the people who don't want to see diversity in movies are definitely like trying to stay more towards that like traditionalist aspect of Disney. But I think that going back to the comparison of like how important it is to have like these educational films, it is so important that like what you're seeing on screen reflects what you see in real life, which is being in classrooms and interacting with people who may not look exactly like you and have different backgrounds. And so I think that it's so important that they are being more inclusive now in who they cast, especially like The Little Mermaid, having a Black actress. I think that's so important especially with like what's going on right now with the Black Lives Matter movement. It's like it all comes back to like these social movements that we see, and then connecting that to mainstream media and how we're able to like digest that information as well.
Ishra?
Yeah, I totally agree with Stormy. And I think going back to like Aladdin, I think the reason why it kind of made me sad that Naomi Scott was playing Jasmine was that there's already so little chances for people of color to even act and be in these really big roles that it was just really sad that, you know, a woman could be playing it, but they just picked someone who was half, I think she was quarter Indian, I'm not really sure, but it was just kind of sad to see that. So yeah, that's what I just wanted to say. Like, I think that there's already so little chances for people of color to go into these big, you know, actress positions or actor positions. So casting a Black woman as Ariel was such a refreshing thing to see because there is a person of color in such a big role. So I think it's okay for traditionally white roles to be played by Black actors and actresses because, you know, we don't get to see that a lot, but white actors are taking up roles that are supposed to be played by people of color. It's just really sad to see.
Yeah, and I just had thoughts about listening to everything. I think it's really important and interesting how we as older audiences of Disney films, like we're conscious of the diversity and the change, and we're conscious of how it connects to social movements, but connecting it to what we talked about earlier about how younger kids don't necessarily look for historical correctness or like consciously see all this. I think it's really important for them to see this diversity in films and not necessarily think too much of it and just normalize it. And they like Disney films for kids, you know, they show what the normal world could be. And so if they see all this diversity and they don't think much of it, that says a lot about where we can progress even further in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I was also gonna bring up like one point, like I don't know, like it might be kind of tied with Disney, but like there's like been so much like on the news about like blackface. It just like made me think about like, oh, giving like minority people like more roles, but then there's like also like even back in the olden days, like if someone was trying to portray like and like Black person, they would like use blackface, and it just became such a trend. Like you see so many like politicians being accused for it, like actors, like Jimmy Kimmel is like trending on Twitter now, like #cancel Kimmel. So yeah, just all these like racist practices, like I'm glad like now it's coming like brought up to light because like there needs to be that recognition, and like we need like equal representation, especially in the like film industry. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that point up too, relating to like minority majority race.
I think it's interesting that you've also brought that up because I know I actually watched Princess and the Frog the other day just because I was like going trip down memory lane, because I remember I was in like the first grade when that came out, and I flipped my mind when I found out there was going to be like a Black princess, and I was like, yes, thank God, there's someone I can look up to. And then I was going through some images on Google, and I saw this one photo, and I like know it's kind of a touchy subject, and I know it kind of got brought up a little bit more when Moana came out, that they were saying like, oh, can little white girls dress up like Moana? And then I saw a photo of a girl, but she was dressed up like Tiana, but she had like black smeared on her face, and there were comments and everything about the photo. Like, I don't know if that's really appropriate or anything, or like if the parents should really be letting their kids going out and doing that. And then that also raises a subject like, can like roles meant for people of color be played by like white people or people who are not of that like role, if it changes the story, if it changes like the historical accuracy, or like if it just changes like the very essence and like the meaning of the movie. So like if they were to remake The Princess and the Frog, like would you guys think it would be like okay if someone who wasn't a person of color was playing that role? Is also another good like thing to just think about.
It's interesting that you bring that point, because I know back then when they were announcing as well the live action of Mulan, there were rumors going around saying the studio wanted to cast Scarlett Johansson. Again, her name comes up as Mulan, when this is a story about like Chinese lore. So it's difficult because there's many angles on the argument. Absolutely, in my opinion, I don't condone when the, like, I guess the diversity and the main character who comes from a specific minority culture is portrayed by someone who's from like a dominant culture. Like, in this case, if Scarlett Johansson was playing Mulan, I just would be so upset because it's about representing Asians, it's about representing Chinese history and like what happened back then. And if Scarlett Johansson were to play her, like, she's white, she can't really, I guess, I don't know if she could adapt the role. She could act it, but I don't know how audiences would really receive that. So I think it's really important, in my opinion, for studios to kind of be aware about when they make an original movie, if they decide to do a live action or remake it, to kind of stick to the historical accuracy of it.
Yeah, so like, where do we draw the line, basically?
Yeah, I was also gonna say, I know we're running out of time, but I'll make this quick, especially for like Pocahontas. Like, I know, especially like Indigenous people's representation in media is very low. So there's like more chances of that they'd bring like a person of color in, which like I'm worried about. So definitely for like, especially for Pocahontas, like we need to be more mindful of that when casting, because this is literally like almost a true story, regardless of like the John Smith, but like like some of the things that are same, like the conflict between the English and the natives. Like you wouldn't want like a white person playing Pocahontas and like fighting against like their own kind. So yeah, definitely.
I just had a thought when you mentioned blackface. It made me think. I have a lot of friends in China and Asia, and so I follow some of like the pop culture issues there. And there's like controversies about them using the N-word or doing blackface, and like a lot of rap culture things get very complicated when other countries take them because they don't understand the history necessarily. And so like a lot of times they say like they just don't understand. And so I think it's important in America for us to think about how we portray things in media, because it doesn't just affect America. We have international influence for how other countries understand these issues too.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I can definitely see that because I remember especially in the Bollywood industry, like when George Floyd passed away, a bunch of the actors and actresses were like saying, oh, like equal justice, like we need racial equality, but they were called out by several like Indian people on Twitter because these actors and actresses promote like skin lightening products. So they're like, you're kind of going against like what you say and what you do, like especially Priyanka Chopra, like when she tweeted that, like she got a lot of criticism from that, and someone was like, oh, I see you in the skin lightening ad, like what are you trying to say? So yeah, I definitely like understand like what you're saying, Catherine, like especially like going to India, like I see like ads and commercials like everywhere for that, and so it's like it's crazy like how it's still present.
Yeah, that just a quick follow up on that. That makes me almost think that what's needed is I don't know what they call it, but the opposite of what we're seeing, where white actors tend to portray people of color in movies. That we tend to see that. We should almost, I think, try for the reverse. Perhaps maybe there's a role for increasing the instances of people of color acting, being on screen, being represented in roles that perhaps historically or traditionally or one would expect would be played by a white person. So I think there might be actually some role for that to kind of try to address the normalization of being white, right? That these movies and visual entertainment kind of portrays. There needs to be a reversal of that, it seems to me. So maybe the reverse of what we're talking about is part of an answer.
I think Dr. Shauna Khan had her hand.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to respond to I think Catherine's point about hip hop in Asia, and it reminded me. I was interviewed by a reporter from one of the Chinese newspapers, and it was about the fact that Chinese rappers are not acknowledging Black Lives Matter, even though they are rapping, they are taking from definitely African American cultural expression, and they're appropriating that, but they don't see themselves as like they. She interviewed them as well, and they're saying, well, you know, we don't have any racism here, so we don't understand what's going on. And one thing that I wanted that I think that we can think about is that there is racism in China. You know, like if we look at some of the behaviors against Africans in China, you know, there's definitely a need for Black Lives Matter in China that these Chinese rappers can take up. So I'm hearing a lot of people say, you know, around the world, we're watching Black Lives Matter in the United States, and yet they're not looking at it in their own backyard. You know, across the world, black people have continued to be on the periphery of power and social upliftment and all of that. So I find it's a great question, and I've been thinking about lately.
Awesome. Well, looks like we reached time, so I don't want to keep anyone longer, but I just wanted to thank you all for contributing to the discussion. I'm really glad like we were able to tie it into like what's going on currently, because I think that is really important, and especially like the media industry to pick up on that and what changes we need to make to promote more diversity. Awesome. Thank you all.